Hey everyone, what's going on? Back with another video testing out Guardian Druid with the Curian Covenant. I'm going to go ahead and get queued up for the dungeon, and while we wait for that, there are a few things that I want to talk about. Um, and they're all right front and center here for you on the screen. So, uh, as always, I want to call out the Covenant abilities that you get by joining one of these covenants. And then I want to get into the first legendary pairing, just kind of based on what we know now that may make the most sense. So, first and foremost, the baseline ability that every class, regardless of what class you're playing, is going to get access to is Summon Steward, which is going to call the Steward to bring you a Phial of Serenity, which can be consumed to restore 20% health, remove all curse, disease, poison, and bleed effects. So beneficial, obviously, from a tank perspective. This can absolutely come in handy. Now, as for the Druid ability specifically, this one is a bit of a mouthful, and there's a lot to go over here. So let me just go ahead and drag this out. As a tank, you are able to bond with someone else, anyone else in your party, or yourself. And if you bond with someone else in your party, you're able to protect your bonded partner. And that redirects 40% of overall damage that they take back to you, unless you fall below 20% health. So you do have a bit of a safeguard. Now, if you, and we're just talking about tanks here, so I won't get into what this means for the other class or the other specs right now. But if you end up saying, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and bond with myself, you get a buff called Lone Protection. And this allows you to connect with your inner spirit, and this reduces the damage taken by 10% for 10 seconds on a 1 minute cooldown. So in other words, you get yet another way to mitigate damage once every minute, which can be pretty powerful in a lot of different types of content, right? So we'll go ahead and put that back here. And so knowing that, and knowing that I will be potentially protecting, someone else in the party, or I will be connecting with myself for that additional damage mitigation, I went ahead and I decided that the best legendary pairing for a skill like this would be the Natural Order's Will. And what this does is it makes Bark Skin reduce the damage by yet another 15%. And then when it ends in bear form, you gain Iron Fur and Frenzied Regen as a passive. So more utility in the Frenzied Regen, more mitigation in Iron Fur. Given the fact that they just buffed Iron Fur this week, I thought this might be a good one to test. So overall, that's kind of some of the rationale that I have behind picking these abilities. Here I am, just in the area where you're able to devote yourself to one of the 4 covenants after you finish your leveling journey to level 60. And it looks like we've got to wait for just one more DPS, and then we can jump into the dungeon. But we will be entering with those abilities. And as of right now, just to kind of show you what I'm talking about, if I go ahead and I cast Kindred Spirits on myself, this gives me the Lone Spirit buff. And from there, I now have an ability that allows me to reduce damage taken by 10% for 10 seconds. So it's a pretty darn long time. 10 seconds is nothing to sneeze at. Paired that with, you will have downtime where you may not have both charges of Survival Instincts or any charges left. This is on a 3-minute cooldown, by the way. So the fact that this is at a 3-minute cooldown, to be able to more liberally use Survival Instincts paired with Lone Protection makes this generally pretty appealing overall. It also gives you a little bit more control than some of the other Covenant abilities right out of the gate, right? What I mean by that, you have the Venthyr ability, which is one of the first ones that we tested out. And the Venthyr ability is straight throughput. And here's what I mean. Ravenous Frenzy. For 20 seconds, the druid spells you cast increased your damage, healing, and haste by 2% stacking. That all sounds phenomenal. for 20 seconds. It's on a 3-minute cooldown, but if you have any downtime whatsoever, which we all know there are mechanics in raids, a boss disappears, you don't have anything to hit maybe for a minute, or not a full minute literally, but for a couple of seconds, if you spend any time idle or not casting or doing anything, you're going to start consuming 3% of your health per stack that you have. And if you've stacked that up pretty significantly within the first 10 seconds or so, you're going to have to deal with some healing needs, and you're going to need a little bit more attention from the healer. If we look at the Necrolord ability, this one seems very tanky initially, right? You have Fleshcraft, which you can channel. You can get a shield up to 50%, but in a raid setting, that's going to be tough to do. That's more common that you're going to be able to get that done in dungeons. And then you have Adaptive Swarm, which is no control in terms of utility. You don't get to pick who the hot heals when it bounces back to a friendly target. You just have to rely on the AI for that. So a lot less control here, and then the damage over time effect is pretty lackluster if you watch the previous video that we did with the Guardian Druid and Necrolords. And then last but not least, and I firmly believe that Kyrian is likely going to be competing with Night Fae more than anything else. Not because of Soul Shape, because the last thing a Druid needs is more mobility for the most part. This is probably not something that you're going to have to use. It's more going to be a preference, and thematically, obviously this fits. But Convoke the Spirits. And if you're not familiar with this ability, you call upon the Night Fae for an eruption of energy, channeling a rapid flurry of 12 Druid spells. Any spells. You don't get to pick who they are or what they are. And that is done over a 4-second period. Now, you hear channel and you get a little bit worried, especially as a tank, like, oh shoot, I can't move. No, you can move while this channels. But you'll cast Ferocious Bite, Shred, Tiger's Fury, Moonfire, Wrath, Regrowth, Rejuve, Rake, and Thrash on appropriate nearby targets, favoring your current shapeshift form. So, obviously I'm in Bear. I'm going to favor more Bear skills than anything. So that is something that we absolutely need to keep in mind here. Now, based on the testing that we did earlier, overall damage done and overall healing done in a dungeon has been highest so far with the Night Fae. We'll see exactly how this ends up comparing, but this was always a nice, oh shoot button if you had to hit it just in case something wasn't going wrong, or if you wanted to get initial aggro on a larger group, that you just needed to hit a bunch of things really, really quickly. Obviously, those 12 spells really help to get and gain initial aggro as an opener. It's also great for larger packs too. So far, this ability has been winning out simply because the other two abilities, when you look at what the Necrolords bring you, and you look at what the Venthyr bring you, Venthyr is essentially bringing you just straight throughput, right? Straight throughput on this ability, this Ravenous Frenzy. So here we're going to get a chance to see this in action. Let me go ahead and make sure I bring the ability with me into the dungeon.
I am the Archon's will.
Okay, we're good. And I'm going to try to do two things throughout here. I'm going to try to pair this with a healer, just to help the healer out. So that's what I'll do to start this off. And this is going to allow me to, essentially, every time I cast this, I'm going to be able to redirect any damage they're taking back to myself. And then, as we continue to go throughout the dungeon, I'm going to cast it on myself. And I'm going to take advantage of the mitigation I give myself by casting it onto tank. And if you haven't seen one of these videos before, or you haven't been with us on stream before, I'm going to be evaluating 3 things throughout the dungeon. I just put them up on the screen so you know exactly what I'm testing: Guardian Druid and Kyrian, and we're testing Kindred Spirits. Now, what I ultimately aim to answer throughout this experience is, first and foremost, how does the ability feel? Is it a fun ability? Is it a ability that makes, thematic sense? Is it something that ultimately feels good to press and makes me feel like I have a reason to press it? So that's number one. Number 2, how is the strength of the ability overall? Is it something that I feel like is strong enough or viable enough to do more than just one set of content? In other words, can it do more than just a raid or more than just a dungeon? And then number 3, the overall long-term viability of that trait. Now, I say all of this, and of course I have to put the asterisks out there because we are still in beta. We have a while to go. I just got a big pull. I'm going to pop Berserk here. We have a ways to go until we actually know the answers to a lot of these questions, right? And that's something I just want to call out, that there's going to be changes. Ultimately, Blizzard has said that they're going to do everything they possibly can to make sure that the player experience based on your Covenant does not drastically change to the point where you're not going to be dissuaded and you can play whatever Covenant thematically feels best and right for you. They want you to be a Curian Druid or a Nightfade Druid, and that's the way they want you to identify. Obviously, the biggest problem with that is that there are certain skills that are strong for your primary set of talents, and that's something that we're going to have to monitor. Now, keep in mind, for this, I am purposely pairing the first Covenant the Covenant ability with what I feel like would make sense for a first legendary to chase down. So you can either agree, disagree, whatever you'd like. But overall, after looking at the Curian ability and seeing the flexibility that it had, I felt like I would like more out of my Barkskin. I would like to have a passive increase to my overall utility in terms of my self-healing, as well as my mitigation. So I will get a free Iron Fur every single time Barkskin ends, and I will get a free Frenzied Rejuvenation every time Barkskin ends. So, something that could work for both raid as well as dungeons. We got the first boss down, and I'm going to go ahead and call my steward because I forgot to get my file.
Welcome, friend. Stitch Flesh will be irked to know you destroyed his prize creation.
Should probably get it on my bars.
I am sure he would gladly take your limbs as repayment.
Alright, I got Barkskin up, so watch the cooldown. It's got 9 seconds. You'll see that I end up getting Iron Fur up. I'm gonna let it fall off just so you can see it. And then a Frenzied Rejuvenation. There you go. Frenzied Regeneration. So there you go. So we've already got the first boss down. Once we get the second boss down, I'm going to switch my bond so that I have it just with myself. I am still on cooldown essentially. Every time we're pulling a larger pack, I am casting Kindred Spirits, my empowered bond that I have here, with the healer, just to make sure that the healer is not taking too much damage. Now my little buddy's on cooldown, but you can use it with the robots over there, and you can get some orbs that would increase your overall performance. That's the Covenant ability in this dungeon. I'm going to go ahead and use a file. So you see the 20% heal there that I get. It's not a lot, but it would be tremendously beneficial if I had a bleed or, a curse or any magic that needed dispelling up. This one's generally a tougher pull. You get a lot of ads that can potentially spawn with these guys, and this needs to be interrupted, so I'm just going to roar and get a disoriented going. hiding in these dungeons it really is a thing. Despite the fact that these are leveling dungeons, the way characters are playing right now is they feel like tanks specifically feel like they need a little bit extra help from healers. And the other thing too is that threat is a real thing to manage again. It was fairly easy to manage it before. You were able to just go up and hammer a mob with essentially 1 or 2 spells, and you had it, you'd be good to go. That's no longer the case, so you actually have to stay on top of it. I've been doing a poor job of it. You see aggro fall off every once in a while. There you go. But as things get focused down, you're definitely in a situation, in a scenario where you need to use your skills a little bit more liberally and tab target more so than you have in current live retail. Okay, so there's another robot over there that you can call your steward to. I believe there's one up here as well. I'm gonna bring this guy back.
Your vaunted courage over your doom.
Someone always gets the patrol,
Your temper
unless you bring that back.
Your brethren are butchered. You have already lost.
Vile monster!
Okay, we're gonna risk it here. We might get those 2 in the corner that we just passed, but hopefully we don't. We'll go ahead and get a disorient out. Help out my healer with my bond. And we're about to do the second boss in here. So this is I'm actually gonna swap my my kindred spirits to myself for the extra mitigation going forward. Only because it's just a little too hard to predict when the healer's taking damage. I'm essentially casting it on cooldown, and for the most part, you know, we're holding the aggro well enough to the point where the healer's not really getting hit too much on the trash, so I'm not sure it's all that useful to this point in time in a dungeon. What I will say is I can see it being useful in maybe a raid setting, something where you know that there's going to be controlled damage going out where you want to help keep a healer alive. Got another big pack here. I'm gonna pop the Zerk. Just try to get some initial thrashes up on these guys. And as you can see, and I've called it out in other videos, I currently, and just about every class has a target cap now on their AoE spells. So we're past the days of just going in and button mashing and being able to get full control over everything. So even though I was thrashing, I did not get thrash on all the targets simultaneously because of that target cap. So I'm going to go ahead and switch my bond up. I'm going to drop it in my buffs, and I'm going to rebond with myself as the target. And now I have the 10% mitigation on myself going forward.
There is nothing you can do to
And overall, I think this is more beneficial, specifically in a dungeon setting, where you get just an extra cooldown whenever you need it. So now I can be a little bit more liberal with it. I'm going to cast it right here and now, because I don't have Survival Instincts up, and I don't have Berserk up thanks to that last pack. Now I have Bark Skin up. I'm going to get a free Iron Fur here, so I don't need to worry about it, but I'm able to stack it, which is nice. Get control of these guys. And as I mentioned before, this is a leveling dungeon. The mechanics here are not all that punishing in a leveling dungeon. But these are at least the intro dungeons to each covenant.
He will
Okay.
use us.
So we got that down within a minute. So this is on cooldown because it is a 1 minute cooldown. So that boss went down pretty darn fast. But had it gone on for another 30 seconds, 45 seconds or so, I would have had this up and ready to go again right around the time I had survival instincts. So just knowing that I have that little extra mitigation when I need it is actually something that's really comforting, really nice. Granted, that doesn't necessarily show up in your throughput overall. So damage is right around where it is with both the Venthyr Covenant as well as the Necrolord Covenant currently. The only one that has high throughput as well as high utility so far has been Night Fae. And again, all this can be rebalanced, but it's worth calling that out.
I don't have a target.
I'm going to go ahead and get it popped on myself, so I've got 10% mitigation on top of Bark Skin. And I'm going to get our free Iron Fur here, as well as a Frenzied Regen. Popping Berserk just to get trash up on everyone so we don't lose aggro. This pack is kind of a pain. So I've got Bark Skin up simultaneously with my Lone Protection spell, and I've been stacking them actually really since I've made the switch over to myself with the Bond, the Lone Protector, and they're stacking really, really nicely. I'm not spiking the way I was. I'm able to face tank a little bit more than before. I'm barely casting Frenzied Regen on myself just because I'm not dipping all that low. So that's just some initial observations there. This feels much better in the dungeon than what I was doing before, which was being botted with my healer. And I don't feel punished for having to use it either. That's the other thing, is with it being on a 1 minute cooldown and knowing that I'm actually getting the extra mitigation on myself and not necessarily taking more damage over that period of time, it's actually really nice. I'm going to go ahead and do it here again. And that way I don't have to Iron Fur. I'm going to get some mauls out because it's something I'm not able to cast all that often. Yeah, these two are lining up really nicely, both Bark Skin as well as the Lone Protector buff. So we'll go ahead and knock out this boss, and then we'll start to talk a little bit about really the 3 questions that I want to have addressed here. And we'll see if people have run this yet enough to know exactly what to do. This is only my 2nd time through this dungeon, but I was hung up on it the first time I ran it. I'll kind of explain it as we go for those of you who are interested in the mechanics in some of the leveling dungeons. I'm happy to go over that stuff.
Try not to damage those limbs whilst you tear them off.
So, each of these abominations are actually, you have a chance to, they'll cast, I think it's like a chain, like Scorpion Get Over Here kind of a thing in Mortal Kombat. Struggling to remember what it's called. And if you aim it right, you can actually bring the boss down earlier on in the process instead of having to kill all these abominations in the group. So we didn't get it there. I believe it starts on the next one. I'm likely going to be stand corrected here in a second, but
You get to work and don't fail me like your predecessor.
I'm going to get a Berserk out. So it's not the Mutilate. But I am aiming him in the direction of where the boss platform is, just in case I get it on me. Because I can't remember which one of these starts casting it first. We got our double Bark Skin and Lone Protector up simultaneously. But we're obviously not going to get it on this guy either.
Now I have to rebuild those two from scratch. Wait to put your corpse to use.
Alright, so for this guy, let's see if he casts it. So we want to, again, make sure that he is pointed and he can fixate on any target. There it is. Point that at the boss.
Your parts for later.
And let's see if he gets him. Nope, he missed it. So you point that at the boss and he grapples the boss. There you go, thought of the word finally. And we'll bring him down earlier. And you essentially have to keep rinsing and repeating this until you figure this out.
Of this one. I'll have you in stitches.
So you're going to want to tank him over here so that people have a better idea of how to line up that arrow with the boss. So watch, he will now, you don't want to be standing in front, you want to move at the last second, and then he'll yank the boss down and you can start the boss encounter. So you'll see if this person ends up getting grappled. You want him to keep grappling the boss. It gives you a free interrupt on the boss. Makes it relatively easy overall to deal with. And there you go. All there is to that one.
Greatest was yet to come.
We get an upgrade as well. So we've got one more boss left, and this one is also one that has a few more mechanics. Overall, it's pretty easy for the tank to deal with, though. And again, I'm just going to leave this on me. Lone Protection on myself feels pretty darn good, so we're going to stick with it. Gonna go ahead and get it up now, along with Bark Skin. Those two seem to synergize really well together, especially with the legendary effect that I have equipped. So for this, you want to get out of that cone, or you're going to get Frost Nova, and then he's about to cast a Storm, and you really just don't want to be caught in the comments. You just keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. You're going to lose DPS here, but that's completely fine. Just don't get hit by that stuff. It's really hard to heal through. And then he's randomly going to teleport members. You'll notice that the rogue is not here right now. Oh, I got to get out of that. He'll teleport people down below us. They have to run to the end of their platform, fight a mob, and then teleport their way back up here. Got Berserk up. Take advantage of this. Get some DPS out. And I'm rooted, so I'm shifting out and back in. Got a little lazy there. We're Bark Skinning, and we are Lone Protectoring. And then just don't let these hit you as the best you can. Survival Instincts is popped, and now we're just going to blitz him down and be done with him. Shift out, heal myself while we just wrap this up. And there you go. So let's circle back here and let's talk a little bit about the questions that we're aiming to answer and really the point of doing all this, right? So first and foremost, how does the Covenant ability feel? I'll go ahead and I'll blow it up again. So this is Kindred Spirits here, and then we've got Lone Protection. So these two things were really the things that we were testing. So I initially, through up to the second boss, I should say, had my bond on the healer. And anytime the healer took damage when I had casted, when I cast Kindred Protection, it would mitigate or take away 40% of the damage that they were taking redirected towards me unless I was low on health myself. So something that's nice, something that you can plan for, probably more so in a raid setting, or if you know that there is significant damage going out on a boss fight to everyone in the party. So that can be beneficial. These are still relatively unfamiliar dungeons. I think the value of this starts to be enhanced a little bit more when we are talking about just getting better familiarity, understanding the timing of when things are going out. Obviously, there's no DBM to alert us right now, but we'll have that. So maybe the value here will increase more so in dungeons to put it on someone else later down on the road, but it probably will have a significant impact in a raid setting. Now, Lone Protection, on the other hand, I think is valuable in both settings. So connecting with your inner spirit, reducing damage taken by 10% for 10 seconds when you are dealing with survival instincts, right? Which is you get two stacks, right? So you can cast it 2 different times, but both of those casts have a 3-minute recharge. And so if you're ever in a scenario where you've casted both of those and you don't have anything but Ironfur to mitigate, that's generally a bad feeling. You will have bark skin more often than not, but if you ever just have that oh shoot moment where you need that extra mitigation, Lone Protection feels really good. Now, if you couple bark skin with Lone Protection, as I was throughout, you're getting significant damage decrease. So 35% from bark skin plus another 10% from Lone Protection, and then if you're running with the legendary that I chose, it gives you another 15% from bark skin. So that brings it up to 50% bark skin, another 10% for Lone Protection, and it's over the course of 10 seconds for Lone Protection, and over the course of 12 seconds for bark skin. So you're talking 60% damage reduction from all sources for at least 10 seconds, and then 50% for the last 2 seconds. When bark skin ends, you then get Ironfur cast automatically and a free frenzied regeneration. So this is a crazy good survivability toolkit. This is something I could see being leveraged pretty heavily, maybe high-end Mythic Plus. Gives you a little bit more control. And also, it gives you the raid viability as well. You can plan for it a little bit better, too. So, the Summoned Steward, obviously, there's always an advantage to cleansing curse, disease, poison, and bleed off of yourself, no matter what. We won't always have, remove corruption ready to go. So, this is something that certainly can be very, very valuable. So, now that we've gone over those things, let me go ahead and get this out of the way. We're now at a point where we're really answering our primary questions here. How does it feel? So first and foremost, it felt really good. It was very smooth to cast Lone Protection on myself in the dungeon setting. It's not anything that I would feel hesitant about doing. It's something that I felt like I could cast pretty liberally. And in all honesty, with these leveling dungeons, you're still at a point, and the gear is still at a point where you're not really in a position where you can face tank everything. But this gives you the opportunity, maybe if you're not so good at kiting, or maybe if you're just feeling a little lazy, quite frankly, we've all been there as tanks, you're able to do that a little bit more. And that's going to help your overall DPS. Now, if you look at the overall damage table for the entire dungeon, I'm going to go ahead and do that now. You'll notice I'm just under 1k in terms of my throughput, so I'm in line with what I was doing when I went Venthyr, as well as when I went Necrolord. It was right around that 1k mark, 1.1k overall. So you're not giving up a ton of damage. So far, the Night Fae Covenant has put me between 1.2k and 1.5k for a full dungeon run like this in terms of output, and I did not have the eye level gear that I currently have now, which is 146. I was closer to the cookie cutter 138, and after running a few of these, obviously the gear level's gone up. So I'm actually doing more damage when I go Night Fae. So if that's something that matters to you, that's something to consider. But the utility is something that you control a little less of because it's 12 druid spells over 4 seconds. You don't get to pick what those spells are. Now, the overall strength of the ability. So question number 2. It feels very strong from a mitigation perspective. It feels like I've added something substantial to my kit, despite the fact that it's only a 10% increase. It's on a 1-minute cooldown, so it's just as short as Barkskin, and stacked with Barkskin can give you up to 60% mitigation from all sources, and that feels really good. You can time that, obviously, very, very well on a cooldown that's as short as that. So the ability strength, I would say, from a mitigation perspective, is very strong. Now, viability. Can I use this in more than just, dungeons? Can I use this in raid? I think so, at least initially, right? It's tough because I'm unable to test raid right now, but my initial reaction is this is a very strong option and could be a front runner for many druids who are bears out there that want to tank and are really looking at maybe doing something unconventional and not necessarily following the Night Fae just because it thematically fits. So overall, I think that Kyrian is a very, very strong option. It is likely something that a lot of bear tanks can consider out there and feel pretty comfortable with. I'm going to go ahead and I'll throw together a video just kind of stack ranking where I would put these covenants just to kind of sum up the series of videos that we've already done. And then I'll go ahead and do the same thing with the legendaries and the pairings that I did just to reemphasize the decisions behind the decisions that went into picking the pairings between the first legendary I would quote-unquote seek out if this were live right now. So let me know your thoughts. Comment below. You feel like I missed the mark, call me out. You agree with me, let me know too. But this has been crazy fun just being able to test this and really kind of get a good idea and a good feeling of maybe which covenant fits best for Guardian Druid.